YouTube, what the crap's going on? Heir of Carthage here, back in Total War, Warhammer 2. Let's talk Lizardmen. It's been a few battles since I've played as the Lizardmen. I think the most common playstyle you're seeing out of these guys is just very dino heavy with a few infantry. The whole smash and wreck kind of mentality that comes in, but the Lizardmen have more depth to them than just the dinosaurs. They actually have quite a few unique units. I don't know that they stand out to me as like I was about to say they don't stand out to me as like unique in any particular area per se. They are, in the sense that their dinosaurs serve a wide variety of purposes, all the way from heavily armored anti-infantry down to less armor anti-large. So I would definitely say that their dinosaurs set them apart as a somewhat unique faction, but you know, the Lizardmen can be underestimated for other uses as well. One of which is their Skirmishers. These guys are not much special in terms of range. The Lizardmen lack a lot of range unless you bring a Bastiladon with a solar engine or an ancient Stegodon. And they have, or actually, sorry, this Stegodon. They have a little more range, though, I mean, their attack is somewhat limited. If you look at the Skink Skirmishers, though, these guys are interesting mostly just for this right here, this poison. So poison takes away 24% speed, 20% weapon damage, 20% armor piercing, and it takes away 20% of the armor piercing missile damage from an opposing unit too, which is interesting. So yeah, it does a whole lot of debuffs to the enemy. It doesn't do a ton of damage in and of itself, but look, 26 ammunition. These guys have a ton of ammo, so they're not going to do a ton of damage fast. They're going to play it out over time. And when you look at them, their speed is 48, which is pretty fast for a foot unit. And because of that poison, it actually makes them pretty tricky to catch and their Vanguard deploy. So it's just kind of an interesting spot. And then what's really curious is if you end up on one of those maps that has like all the shallow water, these units actually don't slow down. They keep moving fast through the shallow water, which is a really cool feature because a lot of other units slow down, and it can make the Skinks particularly useful on those maps. So just something to keep in mind. But anyway, where can Skink Skirmishers be useful? Well, I would think that most people expect, if you're going to take a Lizardman army, that you're going to approach them with your full frontal, no skirmishing, all dino and a few infantry army, right? So like 4 dinos, a few infantry, and you're just going to try and plow right through them. Well, what they're going to do at that point is think, well, it's Lizardmen. They won't have much mobility. They'll be all focused in the center. I'll try and get some missiles around the flank, maybe a crossbow cavalry, you know, some dark shards way out in the back or something like that. And maybe that's how I'll figure things out. Well, I think as a Lizardman, you have the opportunity to switch things up a little bit and try and keep it interesting. So let's look at this match where I played the Dark Elves. Now, the Dark Elves have the right tools to destroy dinosaurs. They have really good armor-piercing missiles, and they have really good anti-large infantry, like the Blackguard. My opponent's employing both. Let's take a minute to look at the map right when we start off the deployment. My Chameleon Skinks Vanguard deploy right in the middle of his Dark Riders with repeater crossbows. Well, Dark Riders with repeater crossbows are actually a good target for Chameleon Skinks because they are low armor, and they get poisoned by the Chameleon Skinks, which makes the retreat slower. And so this Vanguard deploy immediately works in my favor. As you can see, my Skinks loading up their poison-tipped darts here and letting the Dark Riders have it, Amazon style here. So these Dark Riders over here take immense damage immediately. So this is ammo that he can never spend on me because I'm killing him early. And then over here, he wants to fire at my Feral Cold Ones, which is fine. It just means that my Skinks are here, engaging him in combat or shooting at him otherwise. He's using Morathi, which is interesting. We don't see Morathi a ton. And then his line is a mix of Blackheart Corsairs, Blackguard, and Witch Elves. So he hopes to drive my units crazy, meaning my dinosaurs go crazy, I can't control them, and then he can focus them down with his repeater crossbows, but he made the assumption that I wouldn't be able to catch his repeater crossbows or answer them very well, because the Lizardmen don't have good long-range skirmishers. I do have these Skink Skirmishers, and if he had to spend his ammo on them, it would be a waste for him. It takes a while to kill the Skink Skirmishers with these guys, so it would waste a bunch of his critical ammo for going after my core. Now, my core is Saurus Warriors. I mean, what Lizardman core isn't made up of Saurus Warriors? These guys are freaking amazing at what they do. And then I've got a Saurus Old Blood, and then a Skink Priest, Lore of Heavens. So, pretty interesting setup here. Feral Cold Ones supporting the Skink Skirmishers, and a Saurus Spear on each flank. So I've got a combination of poison, speed, and anti-large on the flank, and right now it's working out really well for me. It's giving him a lot of grief over here. My Feral Cold Ones managed to get into combat too. Let's hit play. Now he's got a couple of Cold One Knights, which are stronger than my Feral Cold Ones for sure. But I've got Saurus Spears. His Witch Elves and other units are low armor, meaning that they are going to be vulnerable to Skink Skirmishers potentially. Now, with the Skink Priest on the Ancient Stegodon, he's meant to be a whole lot of heavy anti-infantry damage, plus I've got Curse of the Midnight Wind, which massively debuffs a big group of enemies in the radius, and I've also got the Wind Blast, which I was hoping to use to damage his elite infantry, which he's brought 2 of. Right here, my Skink Priest wasn't serious about retreating. I wanted to pull back and let my Skink Skirmishers do some work on these Witch Elves real quick, because I had a good flanking opportunity, and I was hoping to kind of discombobulate my opponent a little by pulling back initially. Now he brings Morathi in, and he's going to make a really interesting move with Morathi. He ends up just like coming in and jumping down right into my troops. No, Morathi doesn't insta-die, so it's okay, don't worry. But yeah, this is a really, really strange move here, dropping Morathi right in the middle of all these Saurus. Maybe she was trying to cause a blob to use a spell or something. I'm not really sure. Anyway, the Witch Elves get spanked by the Skink Priest. And then I'm going to start the battle over here, and the Witch Elves are going to get shot in the back by my Skink Skirmishers. All the while, I'm going to be chasing away the Repeater Crossbows and keeping them busy. Over here, his Cold One Knights charged my Skink Skirmishers. These guys don't die quite as easy as you think, and when there's a second unit around, they can be very, very pesky. And in terms of the mainline fight, Morathi gets away, as expected. I'm using Curse of the Midnight Wind here. And I believe she was using a spell on me. I didn't catch it there. It could have been Spirit Leech, I think. There comes a Wind Blast, but I forgot to overcast it. So it didn't do the damage that I needed against the Blackguard. So that was a huge mistake on my part. But look over here. The Witch Elves got pretty much wrecked. And now I've moved the Skink Skirmishers over here to shoot the Blackguard in the back. They're not going to do tons of damage, but they will tear it down. And in the center, I'm tearing apart the enemy army, though my Lord is in pretty deep trouble. The Blackguard's all over him. I can't get him away. Soul Blight is in here, so it's going to hurt the leadership. And I'm using my Cold-Blooded here to try and keep him alive, so I was trying to get him away, and then I accidentally missed Micro, and I kind of leave him sitting here for a moment. He's trying to drive me crazy with the Witch Elves and the Blackguard, and he's even dropping Morathi in here, which is pretty crazy. Yeah, see, it instantly drives the Saurus in his mount crazy. So unfortunate for me. Over here, the Witch Elves get wrapped up pretty easy. Over here, the Blackguard is winning, but they're taking a beating in the process, and his Repeater Crossbows have been less than effective so far because they've been chased around the map. The only big problem I have here is that I've had to use my all my healing to try and keep my Saurus Old Blood alive, and that's not good. He's going crazy right in the middle of a bunch of Blackguard, which means he's going to die, so I'm sending infantry to assist him, but Lizardman infantry isn't known for its speed. I do get an Overcast Wind Blast right there. I didn't quite target it just right. It should have come maybe in this angle, but it still did a pretty decent amount of damage. Unfortunately, though, my Saurus Old Blood is going to die at this point. I can't get him out of the fight. I'm trying to keep him alive, but he's going to die. And my opponent's plan is working right here, at least at the moment, and now it doesn't look great for me because I'm getting surrounded. But again, my Skink Skirmishers are outside of here, and they're causing a lot of damage. My Ancient Stegodon is an anti-infantry machine, and it can cause terror, I believe, too. And all of my rampaging infantry isn't routing, it's just rampaging, which means it's still doing tremendous damage. Downside is his crossbows have now gotten back into the fray over here. And he's got some crossbows returning over here, too. But I have Skink Skirmishers that I can start pulling back, and I still have these Skirmishers who have really started to do some nice damage later in this fight. So yeah, the Blackguard could definitely do a lot of damage, and so could the crossbows. I'm going to reroute this Cold One Knights, and then I'm going to quickly punch on through to his Dark Riders. Right now, my Skink Priest is going crazy because of the Witch Elves, but the Witch Elves rout, and I regain control of my Skink Priest. And then over here, I see what he's trying to do with these crossbows, and so I'm able to get my Skink Skirmishers back over here and start causing damage to his crossbow cavalry. So we'll be able to tear them down and keep them from doing too much damage to my Skink Priest. And my Skink Priest can just keep saving up magic to try and get another, what do you call it? Curse of the Midnight Wind. Morathi thought that she could take down the Skink Skirmishers, and that was a huge mistake. Nipple armor is not quite enough to stop 2 units of poison Skirmishers, so she may have overestimated her value there. And then over here, these regrouped Dark Elf infantry, including a Blackguard, were thinking they're going to get back in the fight. But the Skink Priest has something else to say about that. And he's going to send these guys home in a shameful display. You know what? We need to...
Shameful display!
Take that, you dark elves. Yeah, so anyway, once we got that, Marathi's throwing some more spells down in here. I believe she is, at least. I see stuff. Or no, that was me. I threw down a Curse of the Midnight Wind, which finished off the Blackguard easily, and then shatters Marathi. She's getting hit by more Skirmishers, so... That one kind of started out in my favor. Kind of seemed like maybe it was swinging against me there whenever my lord died, but then it came back around, and honestly the Skink Skirmishers were a huge piece of this battle for me. They were very important. They gave me that flexibility and a little bit of speed and nuisance on the flank. It was just enough to keep these repeater crossbows from doing even more damage, and had there been dark shards there, they would have been enough to keep the dark shards busy. And whenever the enemy has cavalry, like these Cold One Knights, can they kill your Skink Skirmishers? Sure, but it'll take a long time, and if you're in groups of 2 and you have support from Feral Cold Ones or Saurus Spears, yeah, the Skink Skirmishers aren't worth it as a target. In fact, they can be a real nuisance because your heavy cavalry gets slowed down with the poison, and you just really struggle to catch the Skink Skirmishers. So I think that's where they can be very useful, and again, remember on the water maps, they can be even more useful. Now, I chevron these units up. You can see that they didn't get a ton of kills, but the kills they did get were quite important on these Dark Riders, especially in the beginning, disrupting that, which allowed me to have a good infantry engagement. My Skink Priest did a lot of work, and then my Saurus Warriors got some decent work done on the line against the High Elves. Obviously, they failed against the Blackguard, but the Blackguard were eventually dealt with between magic and monsters. So it all worked out for me then. I don't know what you all think, but personally I think the Lizardmen have a little more depth sometimes than people use them for, and I'm not going to be the master of it, but I mean, you think about it, they got these Slan Mage Priest of all these different varieties. I mean, you have Priest of Heavens, Light, Slan Mage Priest High, so in terms of spells, they have the high spells, including the Fiery Convocation, so interesting stuff that can be available to them. They also have Lore of Beast, down here on the Skink Priest, so Lore of Beast bringing Doomflock. They have these Skink Chiefs, which are cheap heroes that can be used to do a little bit of skirmishing or just trying to tank a little bit in combat. I mean, they have a whole lot of facets to them here with all these different heroes and mages. And then, like I said, couple that in with the monsters. You have one monster here that can heal stuff. I mean, you have other monsters, like this one's good for anti-large, anti-armor. This one's great at stomping the crud out of infantry. You even have, you know, monstrous artillery. I mean, so I really think the Lizardmen have a lot of facets, and depending on how your opponents decide to use them, it may not always be really easy to guess what the Lizardmen are going to bring against you. They're not as good as skirmishers as the Elves, but they can skirmish. You know, they don't have the elite infantry. I mean, they do have elite infantry. It's not quite up to snuff, in my opinion, with the other Elven infantry, but who needs it when you have incredible mid-tier infantry? I mean, Saurus Warriors are an incredible bang for their buck. This weapon strength right here makes them absurdly good. And their armor-piercing damage is 18, which is really quite solid for a unit that's not actually a dedicated anti-armor unit. So Saurus Warriors can be quite good. I mean, they're really the only downside to these guys is their armor is kind of middle of the road. I mean, it's good for a mid-tier infantry, but it's middle of the road compared to like the high-tier infantry. But you know, you put some shields on these guys, they're a little slow, but otherwise they can be very useful units. What do you all think of the Lizardmen? I think they're an interesting faction. I can't wait to see how they blend in when Mortal Empires rolls around. I could see the High Elves and some of these factions probably competing with just about anybody. I would think the Lizardmen have got to be able to, and honestly, I would think the Dwarves would be an interesting one to match against the Lizardmen, especially since the Dwarves are going to have some newfound abilities for slowing stuff down. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe the Dwarves will be really tough. I'm really curious to see how all this plays out. I can't wait for Mortal Empires. It's coming out soon. I'll see you all there. But not before then. I'll have some more content. See you on that new content.